Hey everybody, I'm Sander Klanenburg, and you are going to join me on this course where I'm going to take you a little deeper into my latest production, a fresh record. It hasn't been released yet. As a matter of fact, I just finished it on the spot right here in the Fader Pro studios in Denver, Colorado. I'm on tour in America. I'm on my third week. It's Monday now. I just played a lovely club here called Beta. And Denver, as you may or may not know, is almost like the epicenter of dance music, since Beatport's based out of here. So it's always exciting to be here. As a matter of fact, 15 years ago, my first gig in the United States was right here in Boulder, which is close to Denver. I'm going to take you into the session. I'm going to explain bit by bit how some of the parts and elements of this record came together. I'm going to take you in depth on what my vision and my ideas are on how to personalize your records, how to make your record stand out and be, individual and something that's, that's close to you. I'll explain a little bit about layering bass sounds, layering pianos, and try and sort of explain at least how I believe you can make your records, stand out. For this record, this session that you see here is the end result of a fairly long process. As with everything, these things don't, come about in an hour or two. In this case, these are a couple of sessions brought into one. I'm quite excited about the outcome. So, I want to take you by the hand and go deep.
Always also the same way, make like a kick drum with some percussions and some stuff.
One of the exciting differences with Fader Pro is that you're going to have access to all the stems and some parts of the MIDI of this particular track, so that you can either follow me in what I do, or create your own ideas with this particular piece of music. It's something that I'm really excited about because hopefully I've inspired a few people out there to use some of these tips and tricks and make a difference themselves. First of all, before we start, I work in Logic 9. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm an old guy. I like this program. I know it. I've worked with it from version 1. 10 is cool, and I love it, but I don't particularly like the display because it's quite dark. And since I work on a laptop in airplanes a lot, I like the brightness of this one. And like I said, it's really literally only because I know it. I don't particularly have any secret weapons that I may or may not use. I've some of the standards that I'm sure everybody uses, like the Lexicon reverbs. I have waves installed, which I use quite a bit. When recording vocals, some of these CLA effects are really nice for vocal recordings. I love Sugar Bytes a lot. I have a package of that, and the WoW filter I use. Vogue is a great compressor for vocals. Effectrix is a great tool to create some effects with. And when it comes to well, actually, one thing is important. I really, really love the Valhalla reverb. I think that's probably the best soft reverb that you can find out there. And when it comes to synths, it's also fairly straightforward. There's nothing too strange there. I like Korg, like anyone else. I got a few of those here. Sylenth is simply standard. I love U-He. If you want to go deep into sound design, I like U-He a lot. Zebra is a particularly interesting synth that will help you along the way. I am not a really huge analog connoisseur. I love working with analog gear. I come from a MIDI environment, obviously, when I started out. So I know how to work with it, but being on the road, it's very easy to just keep everything in the box. And obviously, Native Instruments is very handy. I like Battery, Machine, Massive, those things. But it's really, honestly, not so much, for me at least, about the technical side of these things. I'm really, truly more of a sculptor that sort of brings ideas together. So pretty much standard. I don't use a tremendous amount of tools. I keep it nice and simple. Where I do put a lot of emphasis is creating my core ideas, and those ideas particularly don't really come out of a soft synth or particular kick or anything else. Those ideas come from being around people and being in a studio and jamming away. I love being with singer-songwriters. I love having a guitarist in my studio. I love sessions where you're with friends, like-minded people, and you just jam away. I want to capture those sessions. I want to capture those moments. I want to take them, and really honestly, my setup is all catered to try and sort of nourish and try and have those ideas come to fruition with really the simplest of means. I don't really want to dwell too much on some of the technical aspects of this job. For instance, when it comes to engineering, I throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and what sticks, that sticks. I don't particularly think about it too much. It's just what I feel will survive, and for that, I have a bunch of folders where I just throw samples in, or sessions, or all kinds of elements that I've gathered over the last sort of 10 or 15 years that I use whenever I need them. My sort of go-to sound and toolboxes. So you shouldn't be scared that once you've recorded an a cappella with a singer, to really sort of distill the record or the tune or the thing that you recorded to what you find to be the most interesting. As you may have noticed before when I played a sample, I've pitched it down. I use a simple wave sound pitcher, which is really easy to use. It's -7. It doesn't have any other cool tricks to it than that. And apart from that, some audio treatment with some good compression. If you want good compression, I really enjoy Sugar Bytes Vogue. I think that's a really great vocal reading, compressor, delay, and filter. It does a lot of great stuff. I like that for vocals a lot. So, I use that for that. This is a stem, so I can't particularly show you the settings, but just go in there. It's got some really great settings already for vocals in here, which are actually already really close to what you want. If you want really hot really hot sounding vocal, very loud, mill or rough take, telephone effects, all that stuff. You can get that out of this one. I really enjoy that. So basically, that went through that process, pitched it down -7, like I said, with this little friend here. And what ended up was this. So, we got a hot little vocal right now, sounding very now and very what goes on in the world at this particular moment. I'm very happy. But, we still have a long way to go, because from the original and that sort of like, set up little bass line that sounds like 100 records that are already released, now we've got to build something around this vocal that's going to sort of help bring this vocal in the best possible way to the clubs. And that's what we're here to do. So I'm going to show you how that goes for me and how that process takes place and how things like this take shape. So for this particular vocal, I used Sound Shifter Pitch by Waves, or in the Waves package. But really, honestly, when you pitch down a vocal like that, you can use any pitch that is available to you in whatever program you're working with, whether it's Ableton or Logic. The Logic pitcher it ain't that bad at all, actually. And as a matter of fact, there's a vocal transformer in here, which also works pretty cool. You can play around with it and work with the form and the pitch and even a little bit with the mix, and you can come up with some cool stuff. And for the real daring, you can even robotize that stuff. So there's a lot of ways to manipulate vocals and make it sound cool. And in this case, I use this one. So once I had that vocal kind of ready and extracted what I believed was the nicest part of the most interesting part of what he had delivered and what we had created in that studio, it was time to sort of like come up with the ground chords of what the records were going to use. And to do that, in this case, we used a really simple Steinway piano. Nothing too fancy about it, just the EXS-24. As you can see, I work in an older version of Logic. It's probably because I'm not 19. Maybe I would have worked with Ableton when I was if I would be a bit younger. But it's what I know, and what you know is what you like. So I'm going to play that original vocal, and I'm going to show you which chords became a part of it. So it gives a really nice little sort of like body to the vocal. It gives it a kind of like a melancholic vibe, which I really like. I like my records to be a little bit not dark, but like a little bit on the melancholic side, and to create a piano that's interesting, or a musical moment that's interesting. I always love to build and create as much authenticity to my sounds as possible. I'm going to show you a few things that I try to do to come to a great result. First of all, I'm going to take the basic chord, which is this one. And as you can see, I've used, in this case, 3 layers, and I put them all into a bus. And the bus goes, in this case, to number 1. And on that bus, I took my beloved Vogue compression, and as you may have heard, there's a little delay on there. I'm not too happy about that delay. I'm gonna kill that right now for this particular example. I'm going to use another layer. In this case, it's the same EXS-24, but what I've used to give it a little bit more authenticity is a filter, a very simple, basic Logic filter. And if you close it, you can play around with it, and you can put it in the place where you love it. It's very important to go back to the vocal often to see, like, hey, where does it sit well? Where is it exciting? Where is it doesn't interfere with the original idea, and how does it breathe and sort of like really sort of let loose of its vibe, really. A chord is essentially a vibe. And as you heard, like, I'm opening up a filter, it creates an extra layer of excitement in that vocal. Actually, it gives a texture to the vocal itself that helps the delivery. Going back to the chords. So now we have I'm just going to go quickly do this. There's a vibrato, which is usually used on an organ, but in this case, to give authenticity to my piano, I've put it on here. So I'm going to get rid of the vocal so you can hear that vibrato just a little bit more. Here we go. So it becomes far more like as if it was sampled from like an old record, So the personality and the like I said, the authenticity of this particular piano becomes more and more apparent while you put more layers and elements and little touches on that piano. So I'm going to put my favorite verb. It's Valhalla. I think everybody should have this. It's fantastic. It sounds incredible. So I'm going to put a little bit on there. Well, that's pretty good. I like the way that it now sort of floats on its own. I think it has a nice correlation to the vocal. I think it helps. I have, I can adjust the texture and the feeling and the intensity of this particular piano with my filter. So I'm really nicely in control of everything that I want this vibe to do with my vocal, and therefore with all this being digital and kind of sterile, and some people look at it and go, it's computer music, it's not going to be alive. But with all these elements, like I've all of a sudden created something that I can actually turn into life, just by adding elements like that little filter there. And now I'm going to just quick step to the end result. I obviously pre-cooked something in the oven, just like all the cooks at like every single cooking television program do. They'll go like, oh yeah, and here's the result 2 minutes later. I did that. I recorded the stem to show you the end result of what happened here. You can even see on the graphics that it's growing in from intensity. So there we have it. It's a nice little vibe. It's how it started. It'll create a nice warm moment in the club. It'll be like, girls will hopefully like this. And there, that's just a real basic starting point for the record. It's like I think you can all imagine where that particular moment would fit. It's going to be in the breakdown, where it's going to be a little dramatic, and hopefully the club and the people in it are going to put their hands up and they're going to go like, this is exactly the little nice, warm tapestry that I was looking for. In Holland we call it tapestry, and it's really weird to translate, but it's like almost like a layer that you throw into a room. So once you have the layers, that is going to make sure that your sound is going to be personal and your sound and unique. What I always do is I create one bus that I direct all these sounds to, and creating a bus is super simple. You basically in Logic, go to your where you can choose your buses, and you choose which bus you're going to use. In this case, number 1, because I haven't used any buses in this particular session. And make sure that all 3 go there, and also make sure that the output that you had chosen before, which is usually stereo output, depending on your system, goes to no output, so you don't hear it double. And there you have it. And then if you go to this particular bus, you can do a lot of stuff on there that will work for all 3 layers, like maybe some Nicky Romero Kickstarter, maybe some overall reverb that you want to put there, and again, your compression is quite important. Vocus is obviously great, but I love the glue as well. I think the glue is a great compressor. You can, and I'm sure you guys already know this, but I even love just the presets that they use. I think they have one which has detuned chords on the guitar, which I actually use a lot. Once you've used the vibrato, it becomes somewhat sort of detuned or A-tuned, and so it's nice to get like a compression that works with that, to give it extra little emphasis on that part of the layer. Putting it all together, here we have it. But you can still go back into the individual layer, and in this case, for instance, the auto filter of the main sound, go in there, and so, you really then are in control of that sound. It's rich, it's fat, it's got all these layers. And, as I said before, what I find the most important element of this is once you put 3 layers in there, there's a good chance that new layer that just developed is really yours and not to be found anywhere else, which is going to help you in the end create a record that doesn't sound like other records out there. I think, if you want to make a difference in producing and in making music and standing out as a DJ or as an entity, however you want to call us, digital troubadours, to be unique is really the way forward, and to sound unique is what's going to make you stand out of the crowd. And this is one little trick to do that. Once I've put all these layers to work and I've edited and give it a bit of automation and really truly believe that that's really what I wanted out of it, I bounce immediately. I want to work with audio as soon as I can, just because it's going to free up some CPU. It's going to actually give me another chance to work on it and to mix it and to give the whole layer some other textures that I may or may not want to add. I really quickly want to get rid of all my MIDI clutter. It eats up CPU from the different soft synths that I may or may not use. All the extra little elements that I added to it all eat up on my computer. It's easier to have that one bounce that you work on, and even if you want to add like extra layers, or if you want to add a texture to it or mix it down a little more proper, then with a bounce you're just a little bit more in control. Make sure that you can always go back, because you never know when you may need the MIDI again. If you, for instance, are recording, a tutorial, for instance, you just bounce it, put it in your folder, and off you go. We have a nice single bounce that we're going to use here, and when I listen to it, what's really important as well is before you go into the full arrangement of your track, you need to be sure that your filters and everything that you may or may not want to use are exactly where you want them to be, because obviously after you've stemmed it, you're not so much in control of those anymore. But in this case, I'm pretty certain, because obviously I'm backtracking my production from a finished track to how it came together. This is really honestly the basic element of this track, and I'm going to play it just one more time. This is in essence the track. It's an idea, it's a vocal, it's a hook, it's got some chords. Essentially, it's the most important element of a track. You can have as many kicks as you want, and you can have the loudest compression on your beats as you may want to have, but in the end of the day, it's all about the ideas. As a matter of fact, some of the biggest hit records sound terrible. Why? Because it doesn't really matter, because a good idea is a good idea. And I don't think you should overemphasize or over-concentrate on how things sound or how loud it is or how X, Y, or Z. If your core idea is a great idea, then the record will find its own way out of your studio and into the world, because a good idea never dies. So here we have it, the real basic idea. I think from now on it's going to be extremely important that whatever you add on top of a moment like this, it's got to really have its place. So you got to think and and sit down and go like, okay, so what do I want that may or may not help this shine harder. And one thing is that you may have noticed that there is an increasement of energy. Like the breakdown starts with really mellow chords, and as I've shown before, we filtered down the piano. Slowly, the piano becomes more intensified. There's even a sort of staccato. So there's an increase in energy. The piano is filtered down. Later on, it becomes more scatty. Like it becomes more energy is released. So what I really want at this particular moment in the production is add elements that are going to help create that sort of build. One of the oldest tricks in the book to do that is a single note repetitive string. And I'm not going to lie, I've recorded mine in 1733. Not quite true, but I've recorded mine quite a while ago. And I've been going back to that particular string over and over again. It's out of an R9 Roland. It's like an old school analog organ string synthesizer. And it's crazy because it only does organ or strings. And it's just so incredible. It's got loads of textures and layers, and it feels like it's alive. It feels like it's a real string, but it's got that piercing synthesizer effect to it that really pierces through every thing else that's there, and it has its own frequency, which is fantastic. I did add some sidechain, and really honestly, whatever chord I'm in, I'll just pitch it to whatever chord I need it to be in. And I'm going to play it simply. It's a very simple one-note little string, but I'll play it to you anyway. Every disco record out of the 70s had this at one point. And it's so simple, but it creates so much tension. I guess in your mind, you're kind of like, it's almost like a part of you is like kind of stuck in that thing. And the biggest surprise and the biggest element of this production tool is when it stops. Because all of a sudden it stops, and when it stops, it has a humongous effect. Because when it's there, it's not so apparent, but when it stops, it really, really leaves a whole room empty, and you kind of on your toes, going like, "Oh, wait," So if you put that in your production, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when you put it in this particular moment. What I'll do now is I'll stop it midway, so you'll see, although it seems like such a little moment, but what it actually does is... It's incredible what that little thing does, and it's not in the way of anything else, because like I said, it has its own frequency. It's already quite high up in the range, and it's just a fantastic thing and a fantastic tool that's not going to clutter your production too much to create anticipation. You all remember those horror movies where you only hear that one pitched string to create anticipation or excitement or fright or so it's a great tool. I recommend anyone out there to create a few, so that you always have one at your disposal. This is my special one. It's been with me forever, and we all need those. It's important. So now that we added, that sort of one-note string to create excitement and fill up that sort of part of the spectrum without cluttering the track too much, I'm going to show you another trick to sort of make your track come alive. I think at the end of the day, what we all want to do is we want to dictate these computers to become human, right? I mean, that's in essence what we're trying to do here. And there's a few tricks that I've picked up along the way in the last 20 years that I love sharing with you guys here today. So here we have the piano, and I'm going to solo it out here. As you hear, the piano is, what it is. It's the layers and stuff. What if we go into this file, and we single out in this case, actually, I'm going to just cut this part of the file out. As you actually may see, I'm using flex pitch control on this. As you can see, these little dots here come apparent once you've analyzed your file. With your polyphonic stretch, you can create real nice sounding pitches, because basically this was originally, as I may have told before, 124 BPM recording, but I wanted to go to 125. We'll go into flex pitching in a little while, and I'll show you exactly how that works. It's super easy. But for now, we're going to use this file, which looks a little funny, but that's just because I've got the flex on. So once I've double-clicked it, in Logic at least, you can go to the sample editor, and then there's a few tricks and things you can do here. You can normalize, which, for instance, would boost everything to 0, invert, trim, fade out, but you can also reverse. And in this case, we're going to create an extra element to this layer to create a sort of sense that it is alive or lively played or lively brought to you. Reverse is very simple. It just takes a little while, and here you have it. So now we've reversed these pianos and these chords. Reversing them gives it that sort of cinematic effect, like Trent Reznor, or some of the Depeche Mode productions, or any in that sort of world. They do that trick a lot. They create layers of reversed guitars or pianos or anything kind of sort of detuned, and it creates this really nice sort of like atmospheric. I don't know. It's hard to grasp what it exactly does, but it makes me feel good. So I use it. And to make this even interesting or more interesting, we're going to put some tape delay on here. Let's see. Make sure that if you use delays like this, that you cut out the low end of your delay, so that the delay has room, to breathe into your next chord. But also a little bit of high. I'm going to bring it to 15,000 hertz just to give it that sort of unique space for it to live. I'm going to play it again here. I kind of believe that maybe this is a little too much, back to back. So if we want to create it as a sort of extra little layer, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into track automation. I'm going to go to volume. I'm going to open this up a little more, and I'm going to make a nice little cut here and make a nice little cut there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have this be fairly loud, but I'm going to cut it down a little bit here. I'm going to just at random. It doesn't really matter. It's almost like sort of painting. You just throw it in there and kind of see what happens. You don't need to be super tight when it actually. It's even better if you do these things to just be a little at random, so it becomes even more alive. So. After you've done the work with the volume, and that you can actually see it already here, that the volumes is a little more random. Here's obviously a loud one. Here's a lower one. I'm going to single it out. I don't want to play it to you guys. As you may notice, this one's a little higher in key than that one, and that's super easy to do. You just play around with your pitch and see where it fits nicely, where it has its own sort of space to live. I'm going to show you exactly what happens after I've brought this all back to where we started, which was obviously a non-reversed element. Again, you need to bounce, what you've done to have that survive. Go back here, get this out, effect is on, and we're going to go in there and reverse it back. So now we have this little extra layer here. And combine that with the original piano. And with the string, and with the and now you have it. You know, you have your simple Steinway EX24 preset, and you put it in the digital washing machine and create all these little layers, unique layers, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, it becomes your sound. And in essence, that's what I really want to show you guys. Like, how can you create something that's yours and that's unique?